I think so. I love being out in nature, and I love encountering panties on street corners. Like, yeah, big overlap there.
So convenient life in Japan now.
Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony, and
I'm Ryan. Welcome.
So, normally, well, I guess first I should say Ichimon means one question. And so what we do is we always ask a question about Japan, and then I say today's question, and then I say the question. But before we get to that.
And then I say the question, and then I say the question.
And then I say the question, yeah. So, normally.
And sometimes we answer it.
Sometimes we answer it. Sometimes we, sometimes we say, like, this doesn't make sense. I don't know. All right. So, yeah, normally we stay away from very topical things, right? We stay away from the news. We just try to find things that interest us. That
we want a timeless quality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, this story has been coming up recently in the news a lot. And so we thought we'd talk about it, even though, today's April 1st. We wanted to release an episode on April 1st. And we thought, all right, let's just go ahead and do it. Well, we got together, recorded, very shortly before April 1st. And so anyway, let's get to it. So today's question is, what is Panty Town?
It's a town made of panties. See you next month.
Kind of.
Nah.
So, if you've been, keeping track of Japan-related news, maybe this news story has popped up in your news feed, in your Twitter or whatever.
I'm curious how big of news it is outside of Japan, because it's not like enormous news here, but it's something that people are aware of. True.
Yeah. I mean, I have seen some videos of Japanese news, like this one Japanese YouTube news channel that I see it's been covered there a couple times. And then I've seen like the BBC one that was the one that brought this story to light. And then it seems like a few other ones, but I don't know.
Yeah, their article was really in depth. They went on for 62 pages?
I don't know about 62 pages, but it was pretty long. And then, all the other ones have just been kind of citing that one. But yeah, I don't know how mainstream this has gone, but at least within the group of websites and people that I follow, it seems to be popping up a lot. So
what kind of people are you following that Panty Town is popping up a lot?
Well, on Twitter, on the Japankyo news, Twitter thing, it's all Japan related people.
So hashtag Panties Japan.
Well, I have posted many hashtag panty kind of stories over the course of my working on Japankyo.com. I often do use the hashtag panty or something like that.
Well, I mean, who doesn't?
Right. So let's rewind a bit to explain what this is. Okay, so there's this town in Shizuoka Prefecture. Well, I think technically it's a village, Mura. So if I do mistakenly use the term town, I'm just doing it in a colloquial sense, because there is a technical way in the Japanese government. Like there's the soncho.
Soncho would be like the head of the town or the village. Yeah.
Right. But there's the Soncho. So shi is a city, and then son is village or mura, but different pronunciation, and then cho is machi or town. Right. So there is a way to say it in that way. They have a fancy little convenient phrase.
But as Tony's alluding to, in English, we don't really distinguish that much. So
yeah. So, but technically, this place, Shimogigaoka, it's what the name of the place, in Shizuoka Prefecture. It's kind of a remote place, kind of near Hamamatsu City, but not really, or impractically far, but technically close. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Accessibility.
So, in terms of accessibility, yeah. We will explain that. But anyway, Shimogigaoka is this place that has been popping up in the news because they've suddenly started having a whole bunch of panty vending machines, right? And perhaps you've heard of, Japan has panty vending machines and they sell used panties. And for the most part, that is just utter, not trueness.
Until now. Well, still now, because I believe these are not used, right?
Yeah, these are not used, yeah.
So used panty vending machine, still a myth.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so that caught the attention of Japanese social media, and then it got a whole bunch of news coverage. And the thing is, this is a town that is up until like a month ago or something. Like it was just not known like at all by the average person in Japan or around.
I know, I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, it's like nobody's heard. You say Shimogi Gaoka, like nobody's heard of it. So, it's as I was saying, it's I think it was like 45 minutes by car, up like in the mountain area. It's kind of near Mount Fuji, so it's kind of like a little mountainous-ish area. But technically, actually, it's a lot closer than it sounds. Like there, if you go like hiking, like in a straight path to Hamamatsu City, which is like the nearest big city, it's actually not that far in terms of kilometers. But because it's like kind of in an isolated route, way, you have to kind of wind through the mountain, and it ends up taking a long time.
So if you ever wanted to go on like a hiking trip and have the end destination be panties, now's your opportunity.
Yes, exactly. So
that's got to be a big audience of people too.
I think so. I love being out in nature, and I love encountering panties on street corners. Like, yeah. Big overlap there.
So convenient life in Japan now.
All right, so
you can enjoy nature while panty shopping.
As you may know, if you're at all like following Japanese news, there are many little towns and villages across Japan that are going through population issues. So they have, Japan as a whole has a shrinking population because there's a lot of old people and not enough young people are producing babies, so it's all out of whack and not balanced, and there's more old people. Like I think a third pretty much of the population, somewhere around there, a third of the population is over 65 or 65 or older. And I just ran an article on Japankyo.com about dementia and stuff like that, so that's why that figure stuck in my head. But
in the smaller villages, they're having doubly the problem because many of them are moving to the more urban areas such as Tokyo, Osaka.
Right. And so these little towns, rural areas are trying to find ways to attract people to their places, right? Because without people living there, there's no tax revenue. And so it's like a vicious cycle, and people start leaving and there's no reason to stay and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, there's less work, there's less opportunities, there's less facilities because there's less taxes.
Exactly, yeah. And so just eventually the town disappears, or it ends up being where...
Or becomes a panty town.
Or becomes a panty town, or like there's like one old couple like in the middle of a mountain, and then when they get in trouble and they have to call like the police or whatever, then it's like a huge tax burden, and big problems. So these little towns and villages are trying to come up with creative ways to attract people to their town and to get into the news and to attract tourists. And Shimogigaoka did this through panty vending machines. All right, so this idea didn't come out of nowhere. The town actually has a long history with fabric production. All right,
specifically panties now.
Well, kind of.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So the town back in like the 1500s, I believe it was. So before the Edo period. So in the decades before the Edo period, they were producing fabric and they got well known in the area. And then when the Edo period came around, that kept growing. And they were producing very high quality fabrics, and they started producing fundoshi. So, Ryan, have you seen like in a samurai movie, right? Like they'll be wearing that kind of like loincloth.
Yeah, the traditional old style underwear, which still exists today.
Yeah, you can still get it. And actually, like there's been kind of a resurgence among some people.
Actually, I have a funny story about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
My very first trip to Japan, before I lived here, when my Japanese was bad, and like I think it was 2007. My friend and I were eating at like a late night ramen place because ramen's kind of a late night food.
Yeah.
And out the window, there was an old dude, probably 60s or 70s, wearing only like a t-shirt that was too short and fundoshi.
Oh my goodness.
Walking with who I presume was his granddaughter, like back from the onsen or bathhouse or wherever they went. And he was just like, I'm just a man enjoying my walk with my granddaughter. And she looked like she was horribly embarrassed to be with this dude.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's like
it was hilarious and like so sad to see at the same time.
Yeah, like you tie it in a specific way, and then it kind of drapes over the front, so it covers everything it's supposed to cover. But it also ends in kind of like a thongish. Like you kind of see like a lot of butt, like a lot of rear end. Like
it covers what it needs to, and that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
They still exist, but they're very unpopular with the younger generations. And that was quite obvious by this granddaughter's face.
Like a while ago, probably like maybe even 2 years ago, I wrote an article on Japankyo.com about this organization that are of young people, or relatively young people, trying to popularize fundoshi. And there's this one video that they made of this guy taking it off in all sorts of really creative ways, and like you can't see anything, but he like takes it off in like sudden movements, and it's really funny. And part of the thing is to popularize fundoshi, and they sell their own fundoshi, like very fashionable fundoshi, and they have fashion shows that are all about fundoshi too. So I will include a link in the show notes because that's just a fun video to check out.
This is going to become a Fundoshi episode, but there's also a rock metal band I know that wears very traditional clothing, and they always assure the audience that they are also wearing Fundoshi. I've never been to a live concert, so I'm not sure if they prove it, but I've heard they frequently say, like, yes, we are wearing them.
So you can get fundoshi, but generally it's something you would only see an older person maybe wear, like you said in your story there. Or it's just something that you only see in like old movies. Sometimes you even see like World War II movies, like guys still wearing fundoshi.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure when the trend changed, because like I said, there's still people... I don't know the percents. I know people like 60 plus do wear them. I imagine most still don't, but it is still a thing.
Yeah. So, back in the Edo period, fundoshi was like the default, basically. So, they started using the Shimogigaoka, the town, started producing fundoshi, and they became very well known for both the fabric and the fundoshi. And so, what happened here is here's a pun, because Japanese people love their puns, right? So, Shimogigaoka has a long history, like long before the 1500s, they were there. Literally, it means shimo is the kanji for down, the character for down. Can be read
one of
shimo.
the many pronunciations for down.
Can also be read shita, but in this case, it's read shimo. And then gi, ki, tree. And then gaoka, you see this in other place names, but literally it means like hill, right? Oka means hill. Yeah. So literally it means down, tree, hill. So
kind of like tree at the bottom of the hill or something.
Something like that, yeah. But it also, that word, that name also kind of sounds like shitagi gaoka, right?
If you don't know to pronounce if you see it as kanji and use the alternate pronunciation for the down character, then definitely.
Yeah, so shitagi means underwear in Japanese. So there's this fun, coincidence that, and maybe they did it on purpose. I don't know. Like, we don't know, like, back in the Edo period, what the way of thinking was. Like, did they do it on purpose or it was a coincidence? But it can mean,
we're not historians. We know the name now. I mean...
Yeah. It can mean panty hill, right? Or underwear hill. Sorry, underwear hill.
Yeah, it's not specifically female.
Yeah. So shitagi can mean, either one. Male or female underwear. So it just happened to work out that they became known for producing underwear in the Edo period, but then they also became known as Shitagi Gaoka as like a nickname, because it just happened to be a nice coincidence with the way the word sounded in the kanji. So the town was kind of prospering because it was on the Tokaido road, which the Tokaido road connected Kyoto to Tokyo back in those days. Travel was very much restricted. And Hamamatsu City, which is the next biggest city close there, was one of the stations. There were stations along the road where people would stop and they would get their papers checked. And so they were able to sell these fundoshi in the fabric, and the town prospered for a long time. But it was a rural place, and then the Meiji period comes around and people start going crazy for Western clothes and Western things, right?
Yeah. And fundoshi, not very Western.
Nah, not very, yeah. So, the town kind of chugged along for a while. The fabric was still kind of well known, but it started to kind of fade away. And then fundoshi had a slight resurgence when Japan started getting all, nationalistic. And like I said, World War II, the guys were wearing fundoshi, and kind of had a resurgence. But then...
Prove you love your nation by wearing old underwear.
Yes. Don't want to wear, the fancy briefs. No. So in the post-war years, it was the town was kind of struggling, and then they had a slight resurgence when they started making, premium underwear using their fabric, but Western style underwear, and they had kind of a resurgence. But by that point, people just started leaving to the cities, right? They were going to Tokyo, which was the big city in the area. They weren't really going to Osaka, it seems like, from Shimogigaoka. They were just going up to Tokyo.
Their loss.
Yeah, the town was shrinking, and even though for a while they were called, Panty Town, right? Like that kind of became like a joke, like in the 80s. But and pantsu is the word for underwear too, but with katakana, like the Western pronunciation. Usually that's used to refer to panties, but underwear in general as well. So the town is just kind of fading away, and then the bubble bursts, right? Japan had the bubble economy, it bursts, and so the town was on hard times, and the young people had left, and by the 2000s, it was just not in good shape, and then I think it was in 2018 that a young soncho, right, a village leader, comes into, he's elected into the position, and he's 42 years old. His name is Icho Masaharu. So Icho is the last name, right? Masaharu is the first name. Yeah,
Japanese style. If you didn't know, family name first, given name second.
Yeah,
no middle name.
Exactly. Yeah,
you will be executed if you have a middle name.
Yes, true story. Yes,
that part's not.
So he's trying to think of like what to do. He's seeing like news stories. For example, there was one town somewhere in Japan, I forgot where it was, that they were offering free empty houses to people if they would live there like 5 or 7 years or something like that, right? If you come live there, then we'll give you the house for free for if you stay there for 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, some of them are kind of desperate.
Yeah, they are, and these are totally true. There's they're basically like PR stunts to get their name in the news and have people come to their town.
Though there is also an increase in abandoned houses because of the shrinking populations in these towns.
Yeah. And then this is true. That I saw like a news report recently, but there are houses that because it's so expensive to upkeep, but also super expensive to like get rid of, to just destroy. There are people that sell these houses for like 100 yen, like $1. So that sounds like, oh my God, you get this big house in the mountains for $1. Like, wow, that's amazing. But no, because if you buy it, then you have to pay the taxes, and then you have to like find a way to get rid of it because it's probably not in some livable condition. So it's basically like a big money hole, and that's why they sell it for such cheap like prices. Anyway, so this young guy, this 42-year-old village leader, he's trying to come up with a way to get people to come back, to revitalize the history. And he's looking on Instagram like one time, and he realizes like, okay, let me come up with a way to use social media. And then he remembers, and he explained this in a press conference in March. Like he thinks back to like some of the news that get like a lot of coverage abroad, because he wants to also capitalize on the foreigners that are coming to Japan for the Olympics.
Perfect timing for that.
Perfect, right? So he's thinking, and this was sometime in 2019, but he realizes panties and panty thieves and panty vending machines, all this stuff, like it always like ends up going viral, right? So he comes up with this plan, and he thinks, okay, so we're already known for our underwear, right? And panties get a lot of coverage. So let's come up with these vending machines that sell like super high quality, like expensive, but very nice looking underwear, right? And let's start rolling them out, putting them in the little town, like just secretly. They don't make an announcement.
Make it look like a rumor so people won't believe it, and you'll see like pictures spreading online and stuff.
Yeah. So in February, they start doing this, right? They put one right by they call it the Mura Yakuba, which is like the village, like it's basically the city hall equivalent, but in a village. So tiny little place, but city office, right? Or village office, municipal office, I guess you could say. And they put one right there, right by the front. They don't say anything. And then people start taking pictures and posting it to their Instagram and whatever, right? And then they, just a little bit after that, a few days after that, they put another one. So there are like these rest areas along the main road that passes through the town, the village, and they have like vending machines. There's tons of like vending machines right there because people want to stop as on their way to something. If they're on a long car ride, they might stop, pull over, just get a drink, and all of a sudden, there's a panty vending machine there. And then over the next few days and weeks, like they start popping up. In total, they put up 9. And little by little, people start talking about this Panty Town, right? Like hashtag Panty Town in Japanese, and it's spreading. And by March, you start to see like news reports pop up, and a town, a video report too on one of those Japanese news channels. And then, so it's spreading, like word is spreading. And then he decides to do the press conference. And that's when this thing like really just goes viral, right? This was like about a week ago.
Kind of confirmation. Yes, these stories are true kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And he starts explaining, what's happening. And he starts explaining that people, like a couple of people already moved to the location. They got a city grant, like tax money, to expand the production of fabric in the town. They had a small museum, which they've already expanded, that goes into the whole history of fabric production and the whole Fundoshi thing that we were talking about. And already, like they've gotten money, they've gotten people that have come, and an apprentice, because there's still a couple of like the traditional artisans that making the fabric, so they got some new apprentices. This thing is just going super, super well, and now they're getting like people that, like, we were kind of joking, but the place is also, that area is also known for hiking. So people start hiking and they go and they take some pictures of the panty vending machines and they post it to social media, and it's become kind of like this little tourist spot that's kind of out of the way, but it's funny and interesting and different, right? And people are actually buying these expensive premium underwear, right? So
yeah, foreigners too. They think it's like a cool souvenir to have from their time in Japan.
Yeah. So how much? I think it was like 50,000 yen to like 50,000 to like, what is it? 5,000 to Ichimon yen. Yeah.
I was going to say that sounds a little expensive.
Yeah. Sorry. No, it's always the number conversions are always tricky because.
Yeah. So in US dollars, that would be roughly $50 to $100.
Yeah.
The original price he was saying that was mistaken was starting at $500.
Yeah. Sorry. No. So like $50 to $100. So that is quite pricey for one pair of underwear.
They are handmade.
Yeah, but they're absolutely handmade, like super high quality fabric. They're supposed to be very breathable, just really soft to the touch, very comfortable, and some very nice designs. So they have, very like kimono-ish kind of designs.
Yeah.
They also have they created one of those mascots, like Japan loves mascots, right? And it's like a bird with like panties on its head. And they have one of those panties with like the drawing of the mascot. So it's all like very cute and very just high quality, great stuff. And like I said, the museum has been expanded. So it seems like this has been just a super success for this town. And now, like with the media covering it abroad, the BBC was the one that covered it first. It's just getting out. And I'm sure like with so many foreigners going to Japan soon with the Olympics, tourism is probably going to grow, right?
I mean, I also have tickets to the Olympics, so I might swing over there in the summer.
Yeah. Because, Shimogigaoka, like I said, is not that far from Tokyo. It's a little bit out of the way because, like I said, it's in the mountains. But if you go on a nice hike, too, then it's actually not that out of the way in that sense. But, it's a bit of a workout.
It's much closer to Tokyo than it is to where I live, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a fun story. Anything else you want to add before we give the final note?
Nothing I can think of except maybe an update after I visit in the summer.
Yeah. All right. So, you want to tell everybody the final note that I was alluding to?
You can do the pleasure.
Okay. So, so like we were saying, this is an April 1st episode, April Fool. So that was not true. There is no Panty Town.
Yes, please be aware of this. Well, at least for what I said, everything related to Panty Town was made up. I think my anecdote about the rock band and the unhappy girl were true stories.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah. So everything peripheral to the story itself was totally true. So there are
even
towns,
the history of Fundoshi, what they look like, and their rise in popularity again later in the military.
Yeah. So that all the Fundoshi stuff is true. Our whatever anecdotes we may have, those are true. But
getting executed for having a middle name is not true.
Yeah, not true. Yeah, there is no such town as Shimogigaoka.
Did you check that before we made this? Because I did not.
Oh, well, actually, you know what? I didn't.
We sure hope there's not a town named that.
To me, and I asked one person, that name does sound kind of funky, but it doesn't seem unfeasible, right? It doesn't seem absolutely fake.
Occasionally in Japanese fiction, they will make towns up with names like that. It sounds like something that could pass.
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay, when I type it in, it does not appear.
Okay, good. And, there may very well be pairs of underwear that cost like $50 to $100. That may be true. but not as it pertains to this made-up town. So, and there's tons of crazy like stunts that towns do in rural areas to try to get foreigners to come, and that's kind of where the base inspiration for this came when I was trying to come up with something. So
I believe the free houses thing is true.
Yeah, that is true. And the whole thing about like having to get rid of property because it's just so expensive to upkeep and destroy, that is absolutely true. And that's why you can get like an old house for 100 yen, but you don't want to do that because you end up spending more money than the actual property would cost, right? To get rid of the house and get it in livable condition, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. We had fun coming up with this. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Hopefully it was fun to listen. We wanted to put this disclaimer at the end just because there's so much, especially related to Japan and Japanese culture, just so much false stuff out there.
Yeah.
Please be aware. This is not true.
Yeah. I'll link to a couple other ridiculous April Fool's articles that I've written. One about naked sumo wrestlers, another one about baby idols. Baby idols. Yeah.
This one, gods, when he should goo. It's amazing.
So Reiwa, right? So the emperor changed, and now we're in the era of Reiwa. So last April Fools, it just so happened that they were just about to enter the Reiwa era. So I wrote a whole detailed article about the creator of AKB48 announcing that he was creating the first Reiwa idol group because they were all
born in Reiwa.
Yeah, they were all babies because they were just born in Reiwa, and they were scouting them out for months. And the mothers were at a press conference. They were all like 9 months pregnant, and so the whole big announcement was like, as soon as they're born, we're starting the first. And they had already announced like a single and everything. So if you want to,
the tour had already been like sold out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they had already announced it, all that stuff. So if you want to read my totally fake, ridiculous posts, I will link to them in the show notes for this.
The sad thing is I can see that happening in the not too distant future.
Well, that's why I like doing these, because I consider them almost like parodies of something that is kind of true.
Prophetic parodies.
Yeah. So no, don't worry. Next episode we'll be back to actual real stuff with only like ridiculous jokes interspersed. So back to normal next time.
Yeah.
All right.
Hope you had fun.
All right. See you next time.
See you next time.
Hey, just a quick behind the scenes note here at the end. This episode was actually recorded like 2 months ago. I'm recording this right now, like on April 1st, right before I upload this episode. So obviously there was no way to know that we'd be in the current global pandemic situation that we're in on April 1st. But anyway, we just really wanted to put out something fun, something a little bit silly for April 1st. And I think you still learned a little something. Like I said, the peripheral information was totally true. It's just that the one thing at the core of the story, Shimogigaoka, right, this fake town, was not true. Anyway, hope you are doing okay, and we'll be back next time with more totally real, fun, Japan-related content.